Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. Hope we did not delay you. Uh, with this particular meet is for iCreate. iCreate, as you know, is an organization which is meant for entrepreneurship and technology. It's an international center for entrepreneurship and technology. We have a the center was launched by Sri Narayana Murthy in last September, and we had a ceremony for foundation stone laying earlier this year in April, where both Mr. Murthy and Narendra Modi were present at the site. From there, we have an advisory council, advisory board, which is very illustrious, and we had today our first advisory board meeting. For us to have very powerful people, eminent people come to Ahmedabad and then have a board meeting and leave was something that we thought we need to get the benefit to a larger group, larger audience, and therefore we have a panel discussion which is organized here at 5:30.
First of all, thank you very much for being here this evening. We had the first advisory board meeting. Mr. Jyoti Sagar and Mr. Uday Kotak and I, as well as Professor Sudhir Jain, Director of IIT Gandhinagar, and Professor Jaju of IIM Ahmedabad, were present in person, and Mr. K. Venkatraman, the MD of L&T, Mr. Sudarshan Maini, the MD of Riva, an electric car from Bangalore, and Mr. Dilip Sangvi came on video conference. Since this was our first meeting, one of the main agenda items was to understand the vision of iCreate, to understand the various project milestones that we have, and get the views of the members of the advisory board on how they think this institution should go forward and what is it that they can do to make it a success. In addition, we also had a presentation on the visit of Dr. Madhu Mehta to Israel. Dr. Madhu Mehta went and visited Technion, Israel, one of the most famous institutes of technology and science in Israel. That in essence really is what we did this time. I'll be happy to answer any question. Jyoti, do you want to say anything?
Yes. Mr. Gadvi's presence we should. Mr. Gadvi's presence we should.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah. I forgot. Mr. Gadvi, the managing director of GMDC, who is also a member of the advisory board, and in fact is the anchor person, and Mr. Sahu, the principal secretary to the government industries department, right?
Yes.
They were also present. So it was a very good meeting. Yeah.
Mr. Murthy has already given an overview of what we did.
I don't think it's on.
I think it's not working. It's not working.
It's not on. No.
Mr. Murthy has already given an overview of what we did today, but on a slightly different note, for me to be part of this iCreate organization on the advisory board is a great personal honor and a big opportunity, because what iCreate is trying to do is something which is so important. It sort of goes without saying that for our country to maintain its economic growth and in fact build on it, and for the entire what we call the demographic dividend, the young people who are coming into the workforce over the next many years, startups, entrepreneurship and innovation is going to be the key. So for an organization like iCreate to be created and to start some fantastic work in that space itself is a wonderful and great idea. And we at the advisory board are really looking forward to doing, working along with Madhu and his team, some interesting and useful work hopefully. Thank you.
So we are open for questions now.
So what will be the agenda of this first meeting basically taking place in Ahmedabad?
No, as I explained, the most important agenda item is to make sure that the advisory members got introduced to each other, to make sure that we all understood the vision of iCreate, to understand the extraordinary role that GMDC and the government of Gujarat are playing in creating this platform, to understand the contours of our partnership with Techni and ISRAE. These were really the agenda items. I don't know if you people, I'm sure you people know, Technion and Cornell University won the bid to create a tech campus in New York City when Mayor Bloomberg decided to start a next generation technology campus in New York City.
So what will be the intake of the students for that period, and what kind of a timeline you are looking at basically?
What would be the what was the
intake?
intake?
Of entrepreneurs, and what kind of timeline you have, what this thing will be starting?
So we are starting some of the programs by end of the year, and we will have a first batch size of about 30. Our number of projects expected is starting from possibly 5 up to 10 initially, to go up to 25 in next few years. But lot more will become clear as we go forward. So after a year or so, it would be very clear as to how many people. So our approach is seek and amplify. So how many people we are able to identify who are good bets, we will encourage them to pursue this journey. And so if we find that there are more people, then our capacity will increase. And therefore, really speaking, there is no seat limitation like one talks in terms of AICT, that there are so many people. But we have to create a certain kind of expectations, and then we have to see how many people are equipped to do such journey, and then we have to see what is the demand, and then we'll create the capacity according to the demand. Is this, you want to add anything, sir? Sir, can you add Karusha in terms of anything? The capacities, how many people will we take?
In fact, this is an organization which has been created basically to incubate, such innovators who need some guidance initially, who need some technical assistance, and also, if need be, they tie up with appropriate financing agencies. So right now, as Mr. Madhu Mehta has pointed out, they have already started 2 training courses, and last year they have started. This year's program and for the program for the next few years has already been tentatively planned out, and therefore, as he rightly said, it won't be a ceiling, but nonetheless, to consider and keeping in view the ability of the teaching faculty, the demand from the students and other faculties, they will accordingly flexible the number. So number is not a major issue.
Parenthetical comment I would like to add. A parenthetical comment is that while our campus is being built, it will take a year or so to get that campus at least in some shape. So we have a facility in GMDC building where we can start all the activities. So the location is not a major issue, or campus building is not a major issue.
Any projects which have been identified in any sector specifically will be looking to nurture in this iCreate?
Okay. Sectors.
Any sectors or any projects which have been identified in this sector?
Well, I think in some way the two anchor ideas on which this institution will function are technology and globalization, as Madhu pointed out. Globalization because we don't want the entrepreneurs to limit their ideas just to one geography. We want them to have as wide an arena as possible for their products and services. Technology because, as Madhu pointed out, this is focused on new generation entrepreneurs. Therefore, technology is an integral part of any new generation entrepreneurship. Third, technology is a necessary instrument for scaling up today. Technology is a necessary instrument for bringing down costs. Technology is a necessary instrument for compressing cycle time. Therefore, I would say all sectors, essentially as Jyoti Sagar pointed out, we will be sector agnostic, but we will try and, as far as possible, focus on ideas that will leverage the power of globalization and the power of technology, so that our entrepreneurs can have as big a market as possible. That includes rural India, urban India, and the world outside. Therefore, we want our entrepreneurs to focus on inclusive technologies. We want them to focus on global ideas. Yeah. Please.
Please go ahead.
Please.
Let me just. You want to say? No?
Well, let us
Keep it to iCreate.
focus today primarily on or only on iCreate, because it is an important day in the history of iCreate, and it's a great idea. It's an idea of which all of us can be proud. It's an idea for which we should be thankful to GMDC and the Gujarat government. And therefore, let us focus on the positive aspects of what is happening in India.
So what is the challenge when you take today's environment, globally if you see, talking globalization and technology, I mean both the things are much on a kind of a balancing scale. Because globally there is a turmoil economically. IT companies are the companies which are likely to be burnt out. So what kind of challenges you see, when you talk of iCreate, to have entrepreneurs talking on these two fields?
No, as I told you, we want the entrepreneurs to focus on rural India, urban India, and the world outside. The world outside does not necessarily mean only the United States or Europe. The world outside also means there is the urban poor and the rural poor in Africa. There is the urban and rural middle class in Africa, in South America, in Asia, etc. So therefore, we have chosen a much wider canvas than just US or Europe.
So, sir, have you prepared any kind of future blueprint for iCreate in this advisory board meeting, sir?
I think Madhu is in the right position, he will comment on it.
There is so the blueprint does not get made in 2 hours of a board meeting. We have been making the blueprint for a long time, and the advisory board attempt is always to ratify the ideas and then identify nuances which can be altered. So to that extent, yes, indeed, it was part of the agenda to look at the iCreate model, discuss iCreate model, and see whether there are nuances that needs to be tweaked.
So are there any specific inputs from the advisory board which the team of iCreate need to ratify in
Would you say anything?
I think Jyoti, you want to say? Then I will come.
Well, we did have a fairly, for many of us it was indeed the first meeting, so to get to know what organization is going to do and how we're going to go about it. So obviously lots of us had lots of questions, and most of those got answered, and we had good deliberations. We had some way forward, and particularly in terms of identifying the stakeholders and so on, and how to reach out to those stakeholders.
In October.
But as Madhu said, indeed it's not something that you
next
do
meeting
in
is very
a couple
soon.
of hours. But we have our task out, and we will be finalizing, I think, in the coming month or so, the next 6 to 12 months milestones of what we like to achieve. But clearly, we know the direction we are going, which is very important, because unless you know where you're heading, you won't know if you're progressing. So it was, in that sense, a very useful and productive meeting.
Let Mr. Murthy react to the first one, then we'll come back.
Well, I think, as Jyoti said, every member, every advisory board member, gave his inputs on what the new generation of entrepreneurship should be. There were some people who spoke on inclusivity. There were some people who spoke on issues that matter most to India: healthcare, energy, urban infrastructure, all of that. There were some ideas on what is it that one can learn from that extraordinary country, the startup nation, Israel. Incidentally, the team from Technion will be come to India in October for the next board meeting, which is just 3 months from now, and they will make some presentations here and in some major cities. And I think there's a lot that one can learn from Israel, because as you people know, Israel has the largest number of companies listed on NASDAQ after the US. A nation of 7.1 million people has been extremely successful in producing a lot of very powerful ideas that are appreciated by the most competitive economy in the United States. So I think it's something that we all look forward to, and I'm sure something that you will all look forward to listen to the experts from Technion.
You had a question?
I think at this point in time, it is not fair to talk about other prospective countries because we should finalize any possible collaborations only when the ink has dried. We should talk about it. Therefore, I would desist from talking about any of the other possible collaborations. But at this stage, at this early stage, to have to have technion from the startup nation is indeed a coup. Is I think something of which all of you can be proud of, because there's so much to learn from that country, particularly in entrepreneurship.
So taking it from what you said, basically that this innovation would be targeted to address the urban and rural area, mainly keeping you globalization ideas, addressing the gaps of innovation. So, but how do you see, do you see kind of technology transfer happening? Because majority of the innovations in last 2 decades have come from the West, and East has just been a consumer. So, do you see a kind of a technology transfer happening with iCreate, with these agencies worldwide, and then iCreate emerging as a point of pivoting these technologies at several areas?
No, I think India in the area of software has introduced two extremely important ideas: the global delivery model and the 24-hour workday, based on collaborative distributed development model of software. I think these innovations are fundamentally germane to conquering distance, conquering time. So it's not as if no ideas have come from India, one. Second, I think as we move forward, I do believe that the entrepreneurs at the center will come out with ideas that have relevance not just to our context, but to the whole world, because we would like to encourage them to look at a globalized world. As I said, in Africa, in South America, in the US, in Europe, certainly all those, but we don't want to limit only to a certain part of the Western world.
Can I add one?
Please.
See, first of all, whether technology or globalization or whatever, any entrepreneur must create value. Now, in order for us to be able to create value, if technology is required, either it can be developed or it can be acquired. The one example I would like to give in a very quick way, in Madurai there was Dr. V who started Arvind Eye Hospital, and they were trying to get the cataract surgery, for which there is an intraocular lens that is required. It was costing about $80 to import that from Philips and Siemens. They developed locally, through talent that was acquired globally, an intraocular lens which now they export at $8 per lens. Now you have to identify problem, you have to identify what needs to be done, you have to do it, and you have to do it world class. These are the key elements of creating what we call next generation entrepreneurs.
Would you be taking some questions on economy, the way the scene is basically?
No, not really. I think
not
today we will limit to iCreate. We will limit to the wonderful thing that has happened. We will limit to the future of this institution.
And the next meeting is at
Next meeting of iCreate's advisory board? October, possibly second week of October. We are trying to get them here in Navratra time.